A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I greet you, my brothers and sisters, with the noble and universal greeting of peace used by the prophets and the messengers of our universal creator, Almighty Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukr to Allah, we have the opportunity on another Friday to be healthy and well, to be sane enough to congregate for the remembrance of Allah. Shukr to Allah that we have been guided to Him, by Him, to draw closer to Him. And so, in today's lecture we'll be speaking about the remembrance of Allah. The Quran speaks about the remembrance of Allah several times. And the Quran encourages us to remember Allah. And it says that in the remembrance of Allah, hearts experience assurance. In the recognition of Allah, in the cognition of Allah, when you become conscious and aware of Allah, hearts experience assurance. You see, the Quran tells us to remember Allah often that we may prosper. You see, when the heart feels assured and secured, then we can prosper in this world throughout death and beyond. The Quran also tells us to remember Allah standing, sitting, and even reclining, to remember Allah, The Quran tells us that if you remember Allah, Allah will remember you. If you fail to remember Allah, Allah fails to remember you. The Quran tells us that those who fail to remember Allah, theirs will be a depressed life. You know what I mean? So, people who are aware of Allah and are in a relationship with Allah of submission are different from all other people. The people that are conscious of Allah and are experiencing Allah consciousness, they are different from those who are unaware of Allah and not experiencing Allah consciousness. So Allah consciousness is a different level of consciousness on the planet from non-Allah consciousness, and it can be said to be a unique human state of well-being, salam. The Quran also tells us that Allah puts tranquility into the hearts of the believers and that they may be increased in faith degree by degree. You see? So the Quran speaks a lot about the heart. The Quran tells us that until we remember Allah, our hearts are diseased. And until we remember Allah, that disease in our heart is expanded. You get what I mean? That if you're not aware of Allah, you won't experience assurance. You won't experience security, because a believer who is one aware of Allah, experiencing Allah consciousness, is secure. Their hearts are secure. There's peace in their hearts. Allah puts tranquility into the hearts of the believer. In our hearts there's a peace. There's a patience as a believer, And the Quran also tells us that we are to practice patience, to be patient to practice an excellent, an elegant patience. And it's only really one who is aware of Allah, who's aware of the greatness and graciousness of Allah, who's aware that Allah is trustworthy, who's thankful and grateful that we have Allah. Only one who is aware of Allah and is thankful for Allah who can really be patient, really be peaceful. In their hearts, there is a healing of the diseases in their hearts. So the Quran says this is a book that is in support of the healing of the diseases in the hearts of people. You get what I mean? We all have diseases in the hearts. There's nobody that doesn't have a diseased heart. You get what I mean? And the Quran is, for all of us, including the prophets, a healing. The revelations of Allah consciousness, of guiding us from ignorance and superstition and arrogance, from being lost in satanic trances, from being in a negative trajectory through life, just moving through life fearfully. Where there's no faith, there's fear. When one doesn't recognize the love of Allah, there is shame. Where one doesn't recognize the grace of Allah, there is depression, there is failure to be living a natural life. So Allah consciousness is unique state among human beings. And if you're in Allah consciousness, then you're healing the diseases of the heart. The Quran says, bring to Allah a purified heart. At the end of time, or rather, on the last day, on the day of accountability, we will be seen as who brought to Allah a purified heart. Success is who brings to Allah a purified heart. Success is not how much children you have or how much wealth you have or got to do with your family or what to do with your business or how famous you were in the world or what a big fortune you made. Success has got to do with purifying your heart. You know what I mean? Your state of being. The Quran says there are those who say they believe in Allah and they don't believe in Allah. They say they believe in Allah in the last day, but they don't believe in Allah in the last day. They fool themselves, thinking they fool Allah. They don't fool Allah. They only fool themselves. In their hearts is a disease. And Allah leaves them to stray. They are astray, and Allah leaves them to stray. That disease is expanded. That insecurity, that threat, that vulnerability, that fear, is expanded. So we can either spend our days, with our children and our businesses and money and all these kind of things that got to do with the body. What will I eat? What will I wear? Where will I live? Will I be okay? Am I safe? We can have all these concerns that people have through the body. And, the body eventually returns to the soil. And eventually you are with Allah. And so not everybody is really interested in Allah consciousness, especially if you identified with the body. Satan threatens you with insecurity and causes you to behave in ways unseemly, the Quran tells us. Satan afflicts you with disease and suffering, the Quran tells us. Because Satan doesn't want you to be secure. He doesn't want you to become Allah conscious. If you're not Allah conscious, if you're not worshipping Allah, you're worshipping Satan. The Quran says stop worshipping Satan and worship Allah. Until you stop worshipping Satan and worshipping Allah, if you don't worship Allah, you're worshipping Satan. That means that insecurities, that heart will be diseased, you will be in, grief and sorrow. Allah tells us, who are the friends of Allah? Those whom the past does not grieve them and the future does not make them anxious. They do not grieve. They do not fear. Why? Because their hearts are strengthened through Allah consciousness. The importance of Allah consciousness. And it's told in the Quran that when the Prophet Adam he was repentant and sorrowful and remorse, Allah said, there you and your people will stay until guidance comes to you. And those who receive the guidance, they will no longer be insecure. You get what I mean? You can live your life and you might not receive guidance. You might get a schooling about Islam and religion, of how you should believe, what ideas you should accept and what ideas you shouldn't accept, and what you should do and when you should do it and how many times you should do it. And as I told you, Islam is a wonderful way of living that is all about amal, living at the highest levels that a human being can live. But if there's no iman, then a human being cannot really, if there's no iman, if iman has not entered into your heart, the Quran says, do not say that you're a believer, for iman has not entered into your heart. Rather say, you are one submissive in religion. You know what I mean? And so there is value being submissive in religion. But the Quran also tells us that if there's no iman and there's amal, it's a mirage in a desert where a person dying of thirst will be thinking they're drinking water, but all they're doing is eating sand. It's not going to really avail you. There are people in the world who've got a lot of amal, they have good conduct, which is wonderful. Have good conduct, live in an honorable way, benefit you, benefit the society is fantastic. That is part of Islam. You know what I mean? But it's part of Islam. Islam is really about Allah. Islam is the relationship with your Creator. Islam is about going beyond living in a trance and living in awareness of truth. Truly speaking, Islam is about Iman. Iman is about Allah consciousness. The first article of faith in Islam is Iman. It's Tawheed. It's, declaring that there is no God, but God alone is. Allah Almighty alone is the unique supreme, the one that is and is worthy of worship, worthy of praise, worthy of trusting, and worthy of thanking, worthy of invoking forgiveness, patience, and His prosperity in this world and the world beyond. So our relationship with Allah is the most important thing. I told you, for the first 12 or 13 years of the prophetic mission, there was no mention of anything about organized religion that the Bedouin Arabs then joined. There was only mention of Allah and guiding people to Allah consciousness and Tawheed, the onlyness of Allah, the uniqueness of Allah, the oneness of Allah, and to become aware of Allah. Get what I mean? Now, in your life, it takes somebody who's really genuinely interested in Allah consciousness, to actually become Allah conscious. If you believe in Allah, He'll guide your heart. If you are, human beings will have that which they aspire to, the Quran tells us. If you aspire to Allah consciousness, then you will be guided by Allah to Allah consciousness. Shukr to Allah, I have, for various reasons, over the last 5 years or so, had as my highest aspiration my relationship with my Creator. And shukr to Allah, if you believe in Him, He guides your heart. And Allah has guided me to Him. In the Quran, Allah guides us, and Allah asks us to make dua. And I make dua, Allah guides me into being a mu'min, a believer. I just don't want to be one who's submissive in religion. I don't want to believe that I'm a believer, but not actually be a believer. I want to be a mu'min. I really want to be a secure person whose heart is being purified, who has Allah consciousness. Remember, Hadith Qudsi tells us that the heavens and the earth cannot contain Allah, but the heart of a true believer, of a mu'min, does. And so we can, those of us who are really interested in, we can really be determined to have a relationship of submission with Allah. And that's what I am sharing with you. My adventure, my journey, the challenges along the way, what I see with people as a therapist, and what they are living, and how Allah consciousness is the real solution to any and all problems. That is the healing. There is no other healing except through Allah consciousness. And so many people have an idea of what Allah consciousness means. You can have an idea of what Allah consciousness means. And I explore you to become aware of what you were told and what you were taught. What does it mean to be Allah conscious? A lot of people have been taught and told, they have ideas that Allah consciousness means to live in fear of Allah. And I can tell you something, that nothing can be further away from the truth, that Allah is not threatening. Allah is not threatening. We are not to live feeling threatened by Allah. We are to recognize Allah as the all-great and all-gracious. Allah who is the kind. Allah who is the generous. Allah who is the giving. Allah who has given to us. See, who we have. And Allah who is the forgiving. Allah who is our refuge. Allah is our refuge. Allah is the believer's refuge. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And Allah is never despair. Allah tells us in the Quran, never despair of the mercy of Allah. Tell to those believers, never despair of the mercy of Allah. Don't despair of the kindness of Allah. Don't despair of Allah's sufficiency for you. Never despair. Elsewhere in the Quran it is said that it is only a disbelieving people, a people who disbelieve. Who are the people who disbelieve? They deny Allah. They are deniers of Allah. Those who deny Allah, those who are not Allah conscious, they are despairing. See, a person who is aware of Allah, I can tell you from my own personal experience, these are not ideas in my mind. These are not, because oftentimes somebody will ask me, where did you learn all these things? Which school of thought are you from? Who are your sheikhs, Who are your teachers? And I say, Allah is my guide. Allah is everybody's guide. We turn to Allah to protect us. We turn to Allah to guide us. I have turned to Allah to protect me from this satanic promptings that would keep me away from Him. I'm aware that as I live my life, there's a challenge, that there's a part of me that listens to satanic BS. You know what BS is? Satanic belief systems. Gives you ideas in your mind. And then you believe these ideas in your mind and you live fearfully. And you feel threatened. And then you behave badly. I told you, the Quran says Satan threatens you with ways unseen. Satan threatens you with insecurity and causes you to behave in ways unseemly. It is Allah who extends His forgiveness to you. And it is Allah who is extending of His bounty to you. Allah is giving to us. Get what I mean? Allah knows all human beings are in a state of error. That's not a secret to Him. He said to Adam, the Prophet, that, until guidance comes to you, there you people are going to be lost and astray. Diseased hearts going to remain astray. So we all have diseased hearts to some degree or another. I too have had, and to a level I do have. But this is not as diseased. This heart that I am experiencing today is not as diseased as the heart that I once experienced without Allah consciousness. Shukr to Allah. You see, so this is not an idea in my mind. This is not a belief system. This is not something that is, I am like a robot believing. This is something I'm aware of. This is something I experience. Security is not a thought in your mind. It's not an action that you do. Security is experienced in your being. Al-Mu'min. Allah is the secure. And we can experience being secure. So we can become aware and experience at a higher level of awareness and experiencing than when we are whispered to by Satan and when we are controlled by these ideas in our mind and we are feeling these emotions threatened and vulnerable and we're not feeling assured with Allah and we feel threatened by Satan and we behave badly and we have these patterns that repeat in our life of living very at a low level. If you fail to remember Allah, yours will be a depressed life. You know what I mean? We are remembering Allah. We are aware of Allah, to become Allah conscious. So in these series of lectures, I want to look at what are the challenges of becoming Allah conscious. Are you really Allah conscious? Because if you're Allah conscious, you will experience assurance, tranquility, peace. You will trust in Allah. You will feel peaceful. You will be patient. The Prophet was asked, tell us about a mu'min, and one of the things he responded by saying was, a mu'min is one who's everybody is safe from. A mu'min doesn't want to attack anybody, doesn't want to fight with anybody, doesn't want to blame anybody. When a mu'min sees ignorant people, the mu'min says peace. That's the only response. They don't fight with the ignorant. You get what I mean? And that's where I'm moving towards. Just let the ignorant be and just say peace. To them their way, to me mine, and I'm just thankful that I'm living my life, not wasting my time. I'm living my life doing the work that I'm here to do, is to go beyond Satan worship Allah, to become Allah conscious, to heal the diseases in my heart, to feel assured, and to receive Allah's good in this world and the world beyond. I'm here for Iman and Amal, not just Amal, but Iman and Amal. And I'm here for Halal and Tayyib, not just Halal, but Tayyib as well. And I'm here for Dunya and fil akhirah, not only for this world, but for the world beyond as well. That's my, motto. Iman and Amal, Halal and Tayyib, natural living, feeling good, natural good living in support of well-being, wellness, wealth, receiving Allah's good, being people who live in a way that can actually function as human beings at the highest levels of being. Allah tells us in the Quran, He gave us favors not given to other creation. See, when you become aware of Allah, you won't feel threatened. You will feel assured and you will feel reassured. Once you become aware of Allah and you have a relationship with Allah, then you will experience assurance and reassurance. And no matter what is going on around you, you will be able to connect with that peace in your heart, that sukoon, that heart that is sound. You'll be able to be assured and reassured. You'll never worry. You'll never really be in despair. You come from the havingness of Allah. See, those who are aware of Allah, who are Allah conscious, they don't experience that existential abandonment. You know, last time when I spoke, I told you those that are not aware of Allah, they're existential pessimists. Worried, afraid. If you knew Allah, and if you really knew the power of Allah, because the Quran says we are created, but we are given by Allah that we may be grateful. You know, we are given life, existing as human beings, the highest life form on earth. We have abilities and capabilities, capacities. We are given worth, deservingness, rights and all that sort of thing. We are really favored, given status and standing. We are distinguished from other life forms on earth. Allah has favored us. We were created that we may recognize Allah's grace and be thankful. See? And elsewhere it says the heavens and the earth were created that we may recognize Allah's power. Now if you are aware of Allah's grace, His greatness, His graciousness and His power, and you will know, the Quran says, tell the believers Allah is sufficient for you. Not Allah and somebody. Not Allah and Maulana Guru. Okay? Not Allah and Maulana Guru. Allah and Maulana Guru. Allah is sufficient. Allah is adequate. Enough is Allah for the believer. You get what I mean? So if you are a believer and if you are aware, you would experience existential optimism. I told you those that are unaware of Allah and His greatness and His grace, His power, His adequacy, His sufficiency, those who don't know that Allah is freely giving to us unconditionally life in this world through our death and beyond. We exist and we will continue to exist in this world through our death and beyond. You know? And we exist as the highest life forms in this world. And there's halal and tayyib in this world. There's fi dunya fil akhirah, that there is for us to enjoy experiencing natural living in this world. Allah put love and compassion in our hearts, put partners from among ourselves, that we may dwell with each other in tranquility. There is for us to live satisfied in this world. Allah designed this world for our satisfaction, for us. There's so many fruits and vegetables to eat. There's hands that we have, feet with fingers and toes, and we look at us. We're designed for elegant living. We are moving stiff like Frankenstein or looking like Frankenstein. We got joints and fingers and toes, and we move elegant. We don't move like some strange kind of incomplete prototype human beings. You know what I mean? We are the favored creation of Allah, and we are blessed by Allah. Those who are aware of Allah and are aware of His blessing nature and benefiting nature, that you don't have to make Him be blessing. You don't have to make Him be benefiting. Allah is naturally blessing. Allah is naturally benefiting. Allah is naturally giving. This is Allah granting. Allah is freely giving and granting. If you're aware of Allah and His generous nature, and if you're aware of Allah and His power, you won't be an existential pessimist. You'll be an existential optimist. The reason for that is you won't experience being existentially abandoned. You know what I mean? When you're unaware of Allah and you're not aware of Allah and He's relating to you, you don't realize Allah is and He's relating to you. You don't get that. You're not aware of Allah, you're not aware of Allah's relating to you. It's like I'm here and I'm talking to you. I'm relating to you. You get what I mean? So you are on this call, you're tuned in, you're aware of me, and you're aware of me relating to you. There might be some people not aware of me and aware of them relating to them. I'm just giving you an example. And some people may come to this lecture and some people may not. Now in the same way, Allah is more real than you and I, the actual, ever-living, everlasting, ever-existing, the unique. Beyond the creation is His creator. Allah is and will always be. And Allah created us. We are the creation of Allah. Allah created us, and the grace of Allah permeates all of existence. The Quran says, call upon Allah by Rahman. What does Rahman mean? Rahman means the compassionate. Rahman, the merciful. Raham. Call on Allah by any of His names. Call Him Ar-Rahman, or call Him by His beautiful names. You get what I mean? Now, if Allah is compassionate, and you are aware that Allah is compassionate, how can I be terrified of Allah? You know what I mean? Allah is not threatening. Does it say anywhere in His names, call about Allah as the threatening? But Allah is the fair, and Allah is the just, And Allah is the lenient, Allah is the approachable, Allah is the compassionate, Allah is the merciful, Allah is the forgiving, repeatedly forgiving, perpetually pardoning. Allah is generous and kind. Allah has given us existence, and given us existence as the highest life forms on earth. We have mind and reason. Granted, most people don't want to reason and use their mind properly. Granted. Allah has given us imagination. Allah has given us gifts and favors. Allah has given us to live in this world satisfied and fulfilled, created us to relate to each other, created us to interact with each other. Allah has given to us. We are created caringly. You know what I mean? We're created with consideration. Allah is taking care of us. Allah is taking care of everything for us in this moment. In this moment, the earth is spinning, the sun is rising and setting. You know, it's orbiting. We are orbiting, whatever it is. Everything is happening. Everything is happening. We're not doing anything. We didn't cause ourselves. We don't continue ourselves. We didn't care for ourselves. And nobody cares for us the way Allah cares for us and can care for us the way Allah. And nobody considers us. Allah gave us fingers and toes. Even in your nose, you don't have gills. And in your nose, there's a bone that warms the air as it goes into your lungs. Allah is caring, considerate in a way that no human being can be caring and considerate. Allah is the champion of humanity. Even though Adam and Eve did their thing, Allah is championing and is guiding us. Here, you know, go beyond Satan worship. Become conscious of me. Wake up from the trance. Wake up, wake up. You know, worship me. I'm here. Recognize me. It'll do you good. If you remember me, yours will be a blessed life. If you don't remember me, yours is going to be a depressed. Allah is championing us. You can do it. You can do it. There's a message in the Quran. Do it. Be a believer. You can worship. Allah believes in us. Says you can do it. Claim the refuge. I'm here for you. You know what I mean? Why must I be terrified of Allah when He's here for me? And He's asking me to claim refuge in Him. How can I claim refuge in one that I'm terrified in? So what is Allah consciousness? Who has told us this? And why have they told us this? That Allah consciousness is to live in fear and threat. Who has told us? When Allah consciousness is to live with security. When the Quran says fear Allah, there is times when it says ittaqullah, which means be conscious of Allah. And there is time when the Quran says khawf, which means fear. Ittaqullah is to become conscious of Allah. Be Allah conscious. And then most of the time they just translate that as fear. But ittaqullah is not fear. Khawf is fear. And there is verses that speak of the disbelievers are to fear Allah. They should live because they're acting arrogant. You get what I mean? They're acting arrogant. The moment you become arrogant, Allah will debase you, bring you back to your place. You should be afraid. You know, you should be afraid of denying Allah. You should be afraid of being arrogant. Because bad things happen if you don't be humble. You get what I mean? If you deny Allah, bad things happen. You suffer. Those who fail to remember Allah, theirs will be a depressed life. If you don't humble yourself. You get what I mean? So, what is Allah consciousness to you? What did you learn? What did people tell you? You know, did anybody explain to you Allah consciousness? The people who told you about Allah consciousness, who told them? Where did they hear from? Were they really Allah conscious? You know what I mean? You have to ask yourself this question. Because what am I telling you? It's in the Quran. All the things that I'm telling you, be grateful to Allah. Recognize His power. Trust in Allah. You know, Allah is the deliverer from, it's one of His names, the dissolver of problems. You know, Allah is the forgiver. Allah is the progressor, the prosperer. How can you be threatened by that which is loving of you and supportive of you and available to you and championing of you? See, so most human beings are in a state of existential abandonment. And that's why they're existential pessimists. They worry and they're afraid and their heart is a disease and they live miserably and they don't know how to live and they create problems for themselves and they create problems with others and they make dramas and they think that, you know, those are tests from Allah. The Quran tells us Satan afflicts. Satan afflicts you with suffering, not Allah, and disease. It wasn't Lut alayhi salam. I think in my previous lecture I said it was Lut alayhi salam. It was Ayyub alayhi salam who said to Allah, he claimed refuge with Allah. He says, Satan has afflicted me with, you know, Satan worship afflicts us with, when you live in a trance, when you focus on Satan, not on Allah, when you only concerned with your body and what's going on around you in this world, and you forgot about the creator of the world, when you're living in that state of, not aware of Allah beyond this world, and you're not having that relationship of submission with Allah, bad things happen to you. So he says, Satan has afflicted me with suffering and disease, hardship. You see, not Allah. So some people think, no, I'm suffering because it's a test, and Allah afflicted me with sickness and suffering. No, it doesn't say that. When you fail to remember Allah, yours will be a depressed life. See, people are not aware that they're not Allah consciousness. They're not Allah conscious. They're not experiencing Allah consciousness. Allah consciousness is an expansion in awareness, expansion in experiencing. When you are Allah conscious, you're aware of Allah and His beautiful names, and you're experiencing being related to by Allah. He is Al-Wadud, the loving, Al-Rauf, the kind and affectionate. He is Ar-Rahman, the compassionate, the merciful. You see, Allah is the benevolent, beneficent, Rahman Ar-Rahim, compassionate, merciful. Allah is the giver, the granter, the cherisher. Allah is the blesser, the benefiter, the benefactor. We are the beneficiaries. Now most people are not aware of Allah. They're not Allah conscious, and so they cannot experience these qualities of Allah. When you are aware of Allah and you're aware of Allah, you are Allah consciousness, you experience being loved by Allah, because Allah is the loving. Like for example, you don't have to make Allah loving. Allah is the loving. Allah is the affectionate. Allah is the kind. Allah is the favoring. You don't have to make Allah that. Some people like, we need Allah. We need Allah. We need His help. We need His help. There are people like that. They are in a state of existential abandonment. They don't realize we have Allah. Allah already is. Allah is already guiding us. Allah is already guarding us. Allah is already provisioning for us, already providing for us. We've already been guided. We've already been loved. We've already been cared for. We've already been considered. Those people in that existential state of abandonment, those people in that existential suffering that is Allah unconscious, they, in their hearts is a disease. They experience abandoned by Allah. We need those needy people. You know what I mean? Their hearts are diseased. They're needy. They are feeling abandoned by Allah. Allah has never abandoned anybody and will never abandon us. That is not the nature of Allah to abandon His creation. But His creation can fail to presence Allah in their awareness, and they can fail to experience Allah in their experiencing. When you become aware of Allah and you experience Allah consciousness, you will experience security in your heart. Those diseases of neediness and shame and unworthiness and all that Satan keeps going will cease to be. Shukr to Allah. Allah, the moment you become aware of Allah's greatness, you actually become aware of Allah's greatness. You actually become aware of Allah's graciousness. The moment you become aware of Allah's greatness and Allah's graciousness, you can't remain the same person you were. You see? So most people, they want to remain the people they were, and they want to just practice religion. They want to live in fear of Allah and practice religion, but they're not Allah aware. They're not muttaqeen. And they don't feel secure, and they don't feel assured, and they're not optimists, and they're not open to support a better quality of life in this world, in the world beyond. They're not feeling that love of Allah and that encouragement of Allah. They're not feeling it. They're not feeling. When you are worshipping Satan, you're not aware, you are ignorant, and you're not experiencing, in your head, you're with stories. There's no awareness of Allah's love and sufficiency for you. There's no assurance in your heart. There's no you being loving and appreciative and grateful and thankful. Allah says, if you appreciate, you'll get more. You understand? So people are saying Allah is testing us, He's giving us less. And we need. Like Allah is telling you, no, if you appreciate, I won't give you. I'll give you less. Allah didn't say if you appreciate, I'll give you less. Allah says if you appreciate, I'll give you more. So if Allah is giving, and He says, I'll give you more, I've given you, and I'll give you more, where does neediness come into? Neediness is people who feel abandoned by Allah. And we're going to look at, in these series of lectures, Allah consciousness, and I urge you to reflect on, what do you believe is Allah consciousness? What's your beliefs about Allah consciousness? Who told you about Allah? What do you think it is? See? Because if you think you know what Allah consciousness is and live in fear, you will not experience that existential supportedness. You will never not feel that existential security. You will never feel that even though I'm here and it looks like I'm alone here and looks like this is a dangerous world, I'm vulnerable, but Allah is there for me. And I have Allah. And I experience a secured vulnerability, an assured vulnerability. I live in the world, I have Allah, and I have Allah to support me through challenges. I have Allah to forgive me. I have Allah to give His blessing to me. I'm vulnerable. I can't make the earth spin, neither can anybody else. We can't make the trees produce oxygen, but they do. We can't make the sun shine, it does. We already have all that. Allah is doing that. We can rest assured, we can trust. He's given to us, He will continue to give to us until His plan, whatever His plan, He knows, and then this is the last day, then it's the end of everything, and then we get to see how we lived in the last day. We believe in Allah in the last day. So, shukr to Allah, who has guided us, human beings, that we may be aware of His compassion and mercy and love and support and His sufficiency, and that we can operate as human beings, aware and reason and feel. Because animals are controlled by not reason. Animals are not, they're controlled by threat and vulnerability, impulse, instinct. We human beings have reason and assurance, and we can feel through awareness. We can heal the diseases of our hearts and no longer feel insecure. We can feel secure, and we can be appreciative. We can be grateful. We can be thankful. We can honor our Creator and feel assured with Him and reassured. And we can be to other people secure, and we can be to other people kind and generous and giving. This is how you know you are Allah conscious, because you're aware of Allah's feeling quality and your experience being related to by Allah, and you embody that we as human beings have been given the gifts of Allah to experience being peaceful and patient. And more patient you are, the more Allah conscious you are. People that have no patience, they can't say they have Allah consciousness. You get them? It says if you are patient, Allah is with you when you're patient. And practice patience. That is an excellent patience. And there are people like, what's that? What's that? Live in fear. That's Allah consciousness. Fear. That's people tell us that. It's nonsense. It doesn't make sense. Practice patience. Allah is with those who are patient. Practice patience. Be patient. Be in a state of allowance while whatever is going on, and connect with Allah. Allah is available to you, and use that connection to feel more secure and to feel more appreciative and to receive more from Allah, and watch your world shift and change. Shukr to Allah who has guided me to Him, and He's good in this world and the world beyond. This is the path of Iman and Amal, the path of Halal and Tayyib. This is the path of Fi Dunya Fil Akhirah. This is the path of the believer's refuge. Shukr to Allah. All praise, glory and thanks is due to Allah always. His choicest blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukr to Allah.